Hello everyone, Alec Elger, the SideQuest Gamer here, and this may be a strange way to start off the video, but I have to ask you folks, did you ever fantasize as a child about flying by just attaching balloons to yourself to see if you'll levitate off the ground and into the sky? Well, luckily I never found out because my parents never bought me helium balloons, so I guess we'll have to fulfill that fantasy in Balloon Fight for the NES. Balloon Fight is one of the more recognizable NES titles for a pretty good reason, and may have not been the most original gameplay concept as Atari Joust predates it by 2 years, but what started as a Japanese arcade game in 1984 later gained a more significant legacy when released on the NES in 1986. Developed by Nintendo R&D 1, this game's main programmer was the late Satoru Iwata, may he rest in peace. Everything else like the design of the game was by Yoshio Sakamoto, and upon release it sold well enough for a game of its simplicity. So the question is, does Balloon Fight still hold up? Well, if you've seen my previous videos, you know it holds up. I use Balloon Fight often as an arcadey style NES game that's still timeless to this very day. Anyone can pick up and play it and still enjoy it and have a good time. But I'm questioning its longevity as a standalone video game in itself. When booting up the game, we get the title screen and 3 game modes. Quite common for arcade style games like this. We have 1 and 2 player modes and the balloon trip mode, and here we play as the Balloon Fighter, a small person equipped with a helmet that has balloons attached to it. Jeez, wouldn't that break his neck? I sure hope he's wearing a harness. And the goal of the game is quite simple. Each stage has you go up against numerous enemies with needle noses. They are trying to pop your 2 balloons, so you want to do the same to them. But if they land on solid ground, they will attempt to inflate a new balloon, but you can knock them down into the water during this inflation period, just like you could to them in the beginning of each stage. I find it a lot of fun just seeing how many I can knock down into the water right at the start, and that is a recommended way to do it. But it's easier said than done, because given how the player is floating around on balloons, of course the controls will be a bit floaty. Usually when I say controls are floaty, more often than not it's a criticism, because given the context, floaty controls can make an experience a lot less fun, but only rarely is it praised, and this is one of those rare instances, because while you have to get around with floaty controls, so do the enemies. I especially love how if you lose one balloon and have one left, it controls differently where it's easier to turn and go in a specific direction, but a lot harder to rise. That is honestly a clever consequence for the player. And in addition to the needle nose enemies, we have the stage hazards that change up things like the propellers that can bounce you all over the place. There's these instant kill lightning bolts that like to follow you around. And of course Nintendo has a fascination for man-eating fish. I swear, these fish are utterly terrifying when you're so close to the water, but I can't help but laugh whenever those stupid needle nose enemies get a bit too close to the water and is swallowed whole. In every few levels, there's these bonus stages where you can earn points by collecting the balloons that pop out of the pipes, and that's all there really is to it. Just play the game until you die and get the highest score you can. It's nothing I would play for more than 20 minutes, but it has some charm and appeal to it. Sadly, I don't have friends readily available for the 2-player mode, so what I know is from what I gather from the demo screen and long plays I've seen of it on YouTube. More point bubbles spawn out of the water, and it's potentially a lot easier given how 2 players can take out a bunch of enemies right at the start. I suppose they could have balanced this out better by making the enemies blow up their balloons faster, but eventually the 2 players will reach the more insane later levels. The scoring system seems a bit more competitive in addition to being cooperative, so while having a friend with you makes the game easier, it becomes less about surviving and seeing how far you can go, and more about taking out more enemies and popping more score bubbles, and even getting more bonus room balloons than your friend, which is simple yet effective for a 2-player mode. Yeah, too bad I won't get to experience that anytime soon because I don't have a Switch, and once the Switch has its online feature enabled for 2-player if it hasn't already, I may get to experience that, but until then, I guess I'll have to stick with single player. And finally, let's get to Balloon Trip. This may not be my favorite mode in the game, but it's quite satisfying because it's an endurance mode where the screen auto-scrolls to the left and you have to avoid these electric traps that progressively get harder and harder in terms of placement. Because some are stationary and some are moving up and down, you can collect balloons and bubbles on the way, but be careful not to hit the electric traps or get swallowed by the giant fish in the water, or you're done. There's no lives, it's game over instantly. This mode keeps track of how high your score is in terms of rankings, and the highest I've ever gotten was 8th place. Not too shabby, I'll say. And while it doesn't have the entertainment value that the 1 and 2 player modes have, it's still an entertaining enough mode to be included. And that's all there really is to say. I know this review's a bit on the short side, but Balloon Fight is an example of a good game that's good for its simplicity. It gave me everything I expected, and nothing less, but also nothing more. I can honestly not say it's worth the $5 that the Nintendo eShop would ask for, unless you absolutely love this game. The graphics are simple yet charming, especially when it comes to animations from the flapping of Balloon Fighter's arms, capturing that childish fantasy of flying perfectly, to the surprised look of the needle-nosed men when they are being swallowed by the giant fish. And I do like the few music tracks there are in this game. I can't say I'm a big fan of the blipping sound effects that are the main arena levels, but I do like the bonus room / balloon trip theme, as it's very upbeat and compositionally memorable, and while it's not the composer's best work, it's still quite good. And if it wasn't obvious enough, I would rank Balloon Fight as a good game. It's not mind-blowing, but it is one of the highlights of the Black Box NES game series. Heck, I got more out of Balloon Fight than I did the original Super Mario Bros. Not a knock against that game, but that just goes to show how much fun I had with Balloon Fight. Balloon Fight was never like Super Mario Bros. Or The Legend of Zelda, where it spawned several sequels. Its legacy started and pretty much stayed with the NES version of Balloon Fight through re-releases on the Virtual Console. There was a 1990 semi-sequel called Balloon Kid on the Game Boy, but it's more of an evolution of the Balloon Trip mode than it is Balloon Fight, since there aren't really any arenas except for the 2-player Link game, but it wasn't exactly the same because you only fight against a second player. And oddly, that got reskinned and ported over to the Famicom as Hello Kitty World in 1992. I honestly don't know why Japan never got Balloon Kid in the form we got it in, but knowing Hello Kitty World was Japan exclusive, I suppose that was more marketable given the popularity of the Sanrio franchise. And in 2000, they finally got Balloon Kid in the form of Balloon Fight GB for the Game Boy Color, and as you would imagine, it featured colored graphics and a save battery, making it the superior version of Balloon Kid. Too bad, like Hello Kitty World, that was also Japanese exclusive. Oddly, there was a Club Nintendo exclusive Nintendo DS game called Tingle's Balloon Fight, featuring Tingle from the Legend of Zelda series. I don't know why of all characters he constantly gets spin-off games, and it's exactly like Balloon Fight, except with better animations. I can't talk about the controls because I haven't played it, nor do I have any desire to do so, but the mechanics look identical to the NES game from my observations. And other than the strange sequels that some people probably never heard of until watching this video, Balloon Fight did have a few Super Smash Bros. Trophies with Flipper added as a stage obstacle, and even microgame appearances in the WarioWare games. Heck, the Balloon Trip mode got a remake on the Nintendo Land game for the Wii U. So it comes as no surprise that this game is finally remembered not by just gamers who grew up in the 80s, but also people my age enjoy it. Even the ones that are more apathetic to the NES library in general, so that should say something. So Balloon Fight, other than a few subjective nitpicks I have, there's nothing inherently wrong with this game, but that's because this game has simplicity. And I don't mean that as in a condescending tone, no, I mean that as praise, because some games try to add so much, they don't really know what to do with it, and as a result, it doesn't feel polished. But Balloon Fight just keeps things simple and works with the limitations it set out for itself, and as a result, it created an unforgettable experience unlike any other. Looks like I can cross out Balloon Fight on my review bucket list, and there. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and if you're hoping for a longer review, tune in to the season finale where I will be reviewing Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, the sequel to the original Dark Forces, which I reviewed last December, and since there's a new Star Wars movie coming up, why not? But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and remember to stay awesome.